Imagine driving 3 hours with a custom anniversary gift, only to be stopped by a security guard in his early 20s who laughs and says the wife of your husband is already upstairs. That was my brutal reality on a rainy Tuesday in Boston. I did not scream or cry. I quietly returned to my car and began crafting the perfect plan to completely crush the fake life he had built. Hello to the wonderful audience of Violet Revenge Stories. We sincerely thank you for your constant support. But recently, YouTube has disabled our monetization feature, leaving our channel without the budget to operate. If you find today's story engaging, please consider supporting us with just $1 so we can pay our hardworking staff and continue creating these stories for you. You can donate by scanning the PayPal QR code on the screen or clicking the PayPal link in the description or comments of this video. My name is Alice Morris. I am 34 years old, and for the past 3 months, I have lived surrounded by nothing but the relentless crash of ocean waves and the towering steel structures of offshore wind turbines. As a marine engineer, my life is dictated by precision, logic, and the unforgiving elements of the deep sea. My latest deployment was grueling, isolating, and utterly exhausting. But the thought of returning to the warmth of my husband kept me anchored through the darkest nights. His name is Ethan Caldwell. Recently, he was appointed as the Chief Executive Officer at Vanguard Horizon Dynamics, a massively prominent energy technology conglomerate. It was a highly coveted position he secured, in no small part due to my own core technical patents in turbine efficiency, intellectual property I had willingly shared to help build our future together. I drove for 3 solid hours from the coastal port straight to the heart of Boston, the rain drumming a steady, comforting rhythm against my windshield. In the passenger seat sat a velvet box holding a custom-engraved vintage watch, a profoundly expensive gift to celebrate both our wedding anniversary and his massive corporate promotion. I had not told him I was coming. I wanted the look of sheer joy on his face to be absolutely genuine, a spontaneous spark of romance in our heavily scheduled, demanding lives. Stepping into the colossal glass and steel atrium of Vanguard Horizon Dynamics, I felt an overwhelming swell of pride. The architecture was imposing, a towering monument to the very industry my technical innovations had helped build. I approached the sleek marble reception desk, wiping a few stray raindrops from my heavy winter coat, and offered a warm, expectant smile to the young security guard stationed there. I confidently introduced myself as Alice Morris, the proud wife of Ethan Caldwell, and asked if he could send a surprise visitor up to the executive suite. The guard, a man barely in his early 20s, paused, his brow furrowed in deep confusion before a distinct, almost pitying smirk touched his lips. He let out a short, highly dismissive laugh. "I am sorry, lady," he said, his tone dripping with blatant condescension. "But the wife of the chief executive officer arrived early this morning. In fact, she is here every single day." The air in my lungs instantly turned into solid ice. The bustling noise of the corporate lobby, the sharp clicking of expensive leather shoes against polished marble, the soft mechanical hum of the elevators, the low murmur of lucrative business deals, all faded into a distant, underwater ringing. I did not argue with him. I did not shout or demand to see a manager. My mind, trained through years of rigorous education to analyze structural failures and catastrophic system collapses under immense pressure, immediately recognized a fatal anomaly. I stepped slowly backward, deliberately fading into the dark shadow of a large decorative pillar near the visitor lounge area, and waited in breathless silence. I did not have to wait long. The soft, melodic chime of the private executive elevator echoed across the vast hall. The polished metallic doors slid open, and there he was, Ethan. He looked impeccably sharp in a perfectly tailored navy suit, exuding the magnetic confidence of a man who owned the entire world. But my eyes were not fixed on his familiar face. They were completely locked on the woman clinging elegantly to his arm. She was dressed in high-end designer fashion, her posture radiating an effortless, wealthy arrogance. They walked slowly into the center of the lobby, surrounded by deeply bowing staff, and highly respectful greetings from junior executives. Right there, under the brilliant, cascading glow of the modern crystal chandeliers, she turned to him, brushed a delicate hand against his cheek, and kissed him deeply. Ethan smiled at her, offering the exact same warm, deeply devoted smile he had given me on our wedding day. For a fleeting, wildly agonizing second, I felt my heart physically shatter against my ribs. The primal urge to storm directly across the room, to scream his name at the top of my lungs, to tear down the disgusting facade and demand the absolute truth right there in front of his entire corporate empire, burned intensely hot in my chest. But the fire was quickly, ruthlessly extinguished by the cold, highly calculating rationality of my engineering profession. A screaming, hysterical woman is easily dismissed as crazy, merely a temporary disruption to be quickly escorted out by security. I was not going to be a pathetic disruption. I was a master engineer. When a massive structure is fundamentally compromised, you do not blindly punch the concrete walls. You quietly assess the hidden foundation, locate the absolute weakest load-bearing points, and meticulously plan a fully controlled demolition. I turned smoothly on my heel and walked straight out the rotating glass doors, stepping back into the chilling, relentless Boston rain without making a single sound. I drove exactly 2 blocks away and checked into a completely nondescript hotel, paying entirely in cash to avoid any digital footprint. The luxurious, quiet room felt like a sterile military bunker. I set my bags down, opened my heavy work laptop, and began mapping out the devastating variables of this catastrophic betrayal. I needed raw data. I needed undeniable evidence. Many hours slipped by in deafening, heavy silence as the vibrant city lights blurred through the wet, crying window panes. Around 8 o'clock that evening, my phone buzzed sharply on the wooden nightstand. It was a text message from Ethan. "Hey, darling. I am stuck at the office doing heavy overtime again tonight. The new financial quarter is literally killing me. I miss you so much. Cannot wait for you to come home next week." I stared blankly at the glowing screen. The words, once a deep source of profound comfort, now read exactly like the twisted script of a psychological horror film. He was not just simply cheating on me in secret. He had meticulously constructed an entirely parallel universe. He was openly parading another woman around his high-profile professional life as his legal wife, while deliberately keeping me completely isolated on freezing oil rigs and remote construction sites, quietly farming my valuable intellectual property to endlessly fuel his own arrogant ascent. I typed back slowly, ensuring my tone was perfectly normal. "I miss you too. Work hard. See you soon." I hit send, watching the message deliver. At that exact defining moment, I officially stopped being Ethan Caldwell's blindly loving wife. I fully became the ruthless architect of his absolute, inescapable destruction. The very next morning, I did not pack my bags to confront him. Instead, I wired a retainer fee of $25,000 to Marcus, a former federal agent turned private investigator who specialized exclusively in white-collar economic crimes and corporate espionage. I needed a relentless professional who could trace hidden offshore accounts, unearth encrypted emails, and dissect complex legal documents without leaving a single digital fingerprint. While Marcus began weaving his invisible net across the city, I meticulously maintained my end of the charade. Every single evening at precisely 8 o'clock, I initiated a video call with Ethan. I utilized a sophisticated virtual background program and a localized soundboard mimicking the heavy hum of diesel generators and crashing ocean waves to convince him I was still stationed on the remote drilling platform miles offshore. He sighed heavily into his microphone, rubbing his temples, and said, "I am drowning in these corporate negotiations. Honey, I miss you so much." I swallowed the bitter disgust rising in my throat, forcing a loving, weary smile, completely aware that I was sitting exactly 4 miles away, recording every lie that slipped through his teeth. Within 48 hours, Marcus delivered the first encrypted dossier. The woman I had seen in the lobby was named Jocelyn Vance, She was an obscure art curator with a taste for extreme luxury and absolutely zero background in renewable energy. However, that was not the most sickening revelation. Included in the file was a glossy spread from a prominent Boston high society magazine published exactly 2 months ago. The photograph showed Ethan and Jocelyn standing at a charity gala, their arms wrapped tightly around each other, holding expensive glasses of vintage champagne. The printed caption beneath the photograph read, "Chief Executive Officer Ethan Caldwell and his brilliant engineer wife, Alice Morris, celebrating the future of green technology." I stared at the bold letters, my vision instantly narrowing. He was not just having a secret affair. He had fundamentally stolen my entire identity and bestowed it upon his mistress. He had essentially replaced my physical existence in his public life with a much more compliant, glamorous stand-in, parading Jocelyn through elite galas, investor dinners, and country club social events under my legal name. The absolute depravity of their scheme, however, extended far beyond simple socialite vanity. As Marcus dug deeper into the corporate filings of Vanguard Horizon Dynamics, he uncovered a staggering level of professional fraud. Jocelyn was not merely smiling for the flashing cameras. She was actively weaponizing my academic achievements. The investigative dossier contained copies of several lucrative consulting contracts, each worth millions of dollars, signed in wet ink by a woman claiming to be me. Jocelyn had been utilizing my highly specialized engineering credentials, my Master of Science degree certificates, and my rigorously earned industry seals of approval to personally authorize massive technical proposals. She was illegally acting as the lead technical consultant on complex offshore grid integrations, a highly dangerous field she knew absolutely nothing about. Ethan was using my flawless professional reputation as a golden key to unlock restricted venture capital funds and secure massive state-subsidized energy contracts. All while Jocelyn sat in the executive boardrooms pretending to be the genius behind the mathematics. They were essentially wearing my skin to rob the industry blind. I desperately needed to see the physical reality of this nightmare with my own eyes. 5 months ago, Ethan had convinced me to co-sign the mortgage on a sprawling, multi-million-dollar historic townhouse in the Beacon Hill district. He told me it was a dilapidated investment property he was secretly renovating as our forever home, strictly forbidding me from visiting until the grand reveal, armed with a master lockpick set provided by Marcus. I drove to the address under the cover of a moonless night. The heavy oak door swung open, revealing not a dusty construction zone, but a fully lived-in, meticulously decorated mansion. I walked slowly through the grand foyer, my footsteps muffled by plush, imported Persian rugs. The interior was an opulent display of tasteless, overwhelming luxury that completely contradicted my minimalist preferences. Every corner screamed of Jocelyn. Her expensive perfumes lingered heavily in the air of the master suite. Her customized monogrammed silk robes hung exactly where mine should have been. My name was on the legal deed. My grueling offshore labor was paying the exorbitant monthly mortgage. Yet I was nothing but an invisible ghost financing a lavish love nest for my husband and his imposter. The final, devastating piece of the puzzle arrived on a heavily encrypted flash drive late Thursday evening. Marcus had successfully breached a secured communications server linking Ethan to a massive foreign energy conglomerate based in Asia. Reading through the intercepted legal drafts, the true, horrifying motive behind my entire marriage crystallized. Ethan did not marry me for love, nor did he marry me for simple convenience. He married me strictly to establish a joint legal entity, a marital loophole designed to quietly absorb the intellectual property rights of my newly developed, highly efficient wind turbine core patents. The documents outlined a finalized agreement to sell exclusive global manufacturing rights to the foreign conglomerate for a staggering sum of $85 million. The transaction was scheduled to close in exactly 14 days. Once the funds cleared into an untraceable offshore account, Ethan planned to file for a heavily contested divorce, leaving me legally entangled in endless corporate litigation, while he and Jocelyn vanished across the Atlantic with my life's work converted into liquid wealth. sitting alone in the suffocating silence of my hotel room, surrounded by printed emails, forged contracts, and photographs of a life that had been violently stolen from me. My initial, blinding fury slowly solidified into something entirely different. It morphed into a dense, freezing, unbreakable absolute zero. Simply signing a divorce decree and walking away with a standard settlement would be a pathetic insult to my own dignity. Taking him to court for corporate fraud would take years, allowing him to endlessly hide his assets behind sleazy lawyers. No, the legal system was far too gentle for a betrayal of this massive magnitude. I did not just want my patents back. I swore to myself, right then and there, that I would drag Ethan Caldwell down from his arrogant pedestal and ensure he lost absolutely everything: his fake wealth, his stolen corporate empire, his prestigious reputation, and his pathetic illusion of control. I was going to turn his perfectly designed corporate heist into his absolute, inescapable tomb. The machinery of my retaliation required a legal executioner. I reached out to Sarah, a notoriously ruthless intellectual property attorney based in New York. She was a woman who dismantled corporate monopolies for sport and viewed legal warfare as an elegant art form. Over a heavily encrypted satellite line, I laid out the precise architecture of Ethan's impending fraud. Sarah did not waste a single second on useless sympathy or moral platitudes. Within 48 hours, she had constructed an impenetrable legal fortress. We quietly transferred the absolute totality of my wind turbine core patents into a deeply layered, anonymous independent trust registered in a jurisdiction completely outside of Ethan's reach. We established a complex hierarchy of holding companies, ensuring that any attempt to legally seize the assets would trap the aggressor in decades of international litigation. As far as the public corporate registry was concerned, the intellectual property was safely held by my name, but the underlying controlling entity was now a phantom. The bait was still shimmering perfectly in the water, but the hook was made of unbreakable titanium. Maintaining my disguise required a psychological endurance I never knew I possessed. Every single evening, the clock would strike 8, and I would boot up my video interface. Ethan would appear on my screen, loosening his expensive silk tie, sighing with the heavy, fabricated exhaustion of a dedicated executive. "The pressure is unbelievable, darling," he would murmur, rubbing his eyes in a masterful display of theatrical fatigue. "The board of directors is demanding impossible margins on the new grid project. I am carrying the weight of the entire firm on my shoulders. I just want to be home with you." Off-screen, resting completely flat on my hotel desk just inches from the camera lens, lay a freshly printed stack of surveillance photographs taken just 2 hours prior. They depicted Ethan and Jocelyn clinking crystal glasses at a highly exclusive rooftop cocktail lounge, their faces flushed with the thrill of their massive deception. I would look directly into the camera, infusing my voice with gentle, unwavering support. "You are doing incredibly well, honey," I would reply. "Just push through this final stretch. It will all be perfectly worth it in the end." I was not lying. The end was going to be spectacularly devastating. While he slept peacefully beside his mistress, I systematically dismantled his digital life. During the early days of our marriage, Ethan had foolishly asked me to optimize his personal network security, completely forgetting that the architect of a system always retains the master administrative keys. I slipped seamlessly into his highly secured corporate email server, bypassing his two-factor authentication with a simple override protocol I had built years ago. The digital trail was a map of breathtaking arrogance, hidden within a nested folder disguised as mundane server maintenance logs. I found the finalized escape itinerary. Ethan and Jocelyn were not just planning to steal the $85 million from the patent sale. They had meticulously arranged to funnel the entire sum through a labyrinth of offshore shell companies before depositing it into a private, untraceable financial institution in Geneva. Attached to the buried emails were confirmed first-class one-way flight tickets to Zurich, booked for the exact morning after the final corporate transfer. They intended to vanish completely into the European elite, leaving me behind to face the catastrophic legal fallout and complete financial ruin of a massive corporate breach. However, Marcus, my relentless investigator, had just unearthed a devastating variable that Ethan had completely overlooked in his arrogant planning. Jocelyn was playing a highly dangerous, multi-layered game of her own. She was not a single, independent socialite. She was legally married to Victor Vance, one of the most ruthless and feared real estate tycoons on the entire eastern seaboard. Victor was a man known for systematically destroying his commercial competitors, a billionaire who controlled half the luxury properties in the city with an iron grip. More importantly, Victor was completely unaware that his glamorous wife was spending her days playing the role of a fake engineering genius on the arm of another ambitious executive. Jocelyn was using Victor's massive wealth to fund her high society wardrobe and cover her tracks, while simultaneously plotting to steal my technology to fund her permanent escape with Ethan. I did not need to confront Victor personally. A man of his immense power and volatile pride only responds to absolute, irrefutable data. I compiled a heavily encrypted digital dossier containing every single piece of evidence Marcus had meticulously gathered over the past week. I included the forged consulting contracts bearing my exact name, the high-resolution photographs of Ethan and Jocelyn entering the Beacon Hill townhouse, the illicit audio recordings of their clandestine meetings, and the finalized flight itineraries to Switzerland. I routed the data package through a dozen international servers to ensure total, unbreakable anonymity and delivered it directly to the private, highly monitored inbox of Victor's personal head of security. I was not just handing him a vulgar domestic scandal, I was handing him the exact weapon needed to annihilate his treacherous wife and her pathetic lover. I was silently borrowing the destructive power of a billionaire to perfectly tighten the noose around my husband's neck. The final, critical act of this intricate setup arrived on a quiet Friday afternoon. My phone chimed with a highly urgent email notification from Ethan. "Darling, I am so incredibly sorry to bother you while you are working out on the rig," he wrote, his tone dripping with manufactured panic. "My accounting team found a massive discrepancy in our joint tax filings from 2 years ago. We are facing a severe federal penalty by Monday morning if we do not submit a correction immediately. I desperately need you to digitally sign this standard amendment form right now so I can file it before the agency deadline." I opened the attached document. To the untrained eye, it looked exactly like a routine federal tax disclosure, filled with dense, agonizingly boring financial jargon and standard bureaucratic formatting. But I was an engineer who spent my entire life hunting for microscopic structural flaws under immense pressure. Buried deep within the 30th page, seamlessly blended into the boilerplate liability clauses where no ordinary person would ever read, was the ultimate hidden trap. It was not a tax document at all. It was an irrevocable, blanket legal power of attorney, granting Ethan Caldwell the absolute authority to unilaterally transfer, sell, or liquidate all intellectual property registered under the name Alice Morris. He was handing me the pen, smiling warmly, and asking me to voluntarily sign away everything I had ever built. I replied to his frantic electronic mail with a perfectly crafted facade of naive, panicking urgency. "Oh my God, Ethan, I am so incredibly sorry," I typed rapidly, making sure my phrasing sounded suitably compliant. "I am reviewing it and signing it right now. Please submit it immediately before the federal deadline hits." I downloaded the encrypted file, but I did not simply attach my standard digital certificate. Utilizing a deeply specialized cryptographic tool I had designed years ago for offshore data protection, I embedded a corrupted algorithm right into the foundational code of the digital signature block. It generated a microscopic, invisible digital watermark that actively contradicted the visible text on the screen, essentially functioning as a legal self-destruct button. To Ethan and his highly paid, lazy corporate attorneys, the document looked flawlessly executed and completely legitimate, but in any federal court of law across the country, that specific digital signature officially classified the contract as a permanently nullified draft. It was mathematically and legally worthless. I sent the file back across the secure server. Exactly 3 minutes later, Ethan replied with a barrage of affectionate messages, saying, "You saved my life, darling. You are the best wife in the world. I love you. I closed my laptop in the dark hotel room. He had no idea he was holding a blank, useless piece of paper. Exactly 48 hours later, the grand ballroom of the most extraordinarily expensive luxury hotel in downtown Boston was transformed into a massive, glittering monument to Ethan's towering ego. He and Jocelyn were hosting a spectacularly lavish gala, inviting the entire Vanguard Horizon Dynamics board of directors, major foreign investors, and the absolute elite of the city's financial sector. Officially, the invitations framed the event as a grand celebration of the company securing a historic, industry-defining international technology transfer. Unofficially, it was their extravagant, arrogant victory lap before legally abandoning me and absconding to the European continent with $85 million. From my vantage point in a rented black executive town car parked discreetly down the dark street, I could see the hotel valets frantically rushing to park a steady, endless stream of imported supercars. The cold night air literally crackled with the heavy, intoxicating energy of massive corporate wealth changing hands as I sat quietly in the shadows of the leather back seat. My secure mobile phone vibrated violently with a single, highly encrypted text message. The sender identification was blocked by a string of random numbers, but the cold, authoritative tone was unmistakable. It was Victor Vance. The message read, "I have thoroughly reviewed your entire digital package, every single audio file, every forged signature, and every flight ticket. The sheer, blinding audacity of these two pathetic parasites is almost impressive. I understand they are currently hosting a rather expensive party tonight to celebrate their imaginary triumph over us. I am officially offering you a temporary, highly destructive alliance. Let us walk into that ballroom together and bury them both alive in front of the entire city." A cold, remarkably sharp smile spread across my face. The billionaire predator had swallowed the bait perfectly. I quickly typed my confident reply. "I am already waiting outside the perimeter. Meet me at the main marble foyer in exactly 15 minutes. We end their entire existence tonight." Inside that cavernous, brightly lit ballroom, Ethan was completely intoxicated by his own fabricated brilliance. Through the hotel's high-definition live-stream broadcast, which was meant for their overseas partners, I watched him smoothly navigate the dense crowd of billionaires. He was shaking hands with wealthy venture capitalists, graciously accepting their profound congratulations and laughing at their terrible jokes. Standing firmly by his side, draped in a breathtakingly expensive diamond necklace completely paid for by my grueling offshore labor, was Jocelyn. She was smiling radiantly, eagerly absorbing the deep admiration of the crowd as they continuously praised her non-existent engineering genius. They were absolutely surrounded by a massive sea of applause, completely blind to the terrifying reality that every single exit door in their carefully constructed universe was about to be permanently deadbolted. They were gleefully celebrating a massive fortune that had already been legally vaporized by my secret independent trust, waving a forged legal document that carried the exact legal weight of a wet napkin. The time for waiting was over. I stepped out of the black town car and let the freezing Boston wind hit my face. I was absolutely not wearing a pathetic revenge dress. I was not playing the predictable role of the heartbroken, crying wife seeking pathetic emotional closure. I had meticulously chosen a razor-sharp, bespoke midnight blue tailored suit, paired with formidable designer stiletto heels that struck the pavement like the gavel of a Supreme Court judge. I pulled my shoulders back, feeling the heavy, deeply satisfying weight of absolute, untouchable power coursing through my veins. I was the master architect, the sole legitimate owner of the multi-million-dollar technology they were trying to steal, and I was stepping into the light to reclaim my entire empire. I walked purposefully through the grand revolving glass doors of the hotel lobby, the massive crystal chandeliers casting a stark, brilliant light on my path. The heavy, muffled bass of the live classical string quartet echoed loudly from the second floor. According to the leaked event schedule in my pocket, Ethan was scheduled to step up to the grand podium in exactly 2 minutes. He was going to stand before hundreds of the most powerful people in the state and deliver a soaring, impassioned speech, praising the brilliant mind and unwavering dedication of his beautiful genius wife, standing right beside him. The grand illusion was at its absolute zenith. The trap was fully primed and locked. I stepped onto the grand sweeping staircase, my eyes locked on the massive, ornate oak doors of the ballroom. They were thoroughly drunk on their own blinding greed, completely unaware that the heavy blade of the guillotine was already suspended high above their necks, just waiting for me to walk in and cut the rope. The massive oak double doors of the grand ballroom did not simply open. I pushed them apart with a violent, resounding force that instantly severed the lively chatter of over 200 elite guests. The heavy thud of the solid wood hitting the brass wall stoppers echoed like a gunshot across the cavernous room. The live classical string quartet, previously playing a cheerful symphony, abruptly halted in a discordant screech of bows against strings. Every single head in that glittering, opulent space turned simultaneously toward the entrance. I stepped over the threshold, bathed in the harsh, uncompromising light of the crystal chandeliers. I did not rush. I walked down the center aisle with the slow, measured, and absolute authority of a monarch returning to reclaim a stolen throne. My bespoke midnight blue suit cut a striking contrast against the sea of overly extravagant evening gowns. I kept my posture rigidly straight, my chin held high, projecting an overwhelming, lethal confidence that immediately forced the crowd of billionaires and corporate executives to instinctively part ways and clear a path for me. At the far end of the room, standing proudly behind the grand mahogany podium, Ethan was frozen mid-sentence. His mouth was slightly open, his charismatic smile completely wiped away, replaced by an expression of pure, unadulterated terror. The blood drained so rapidly from his face that he looked exactly like a reanimated corpse. Cold sweat immediately beaded on his forehead, glistening under the stage lights. His fingers, suddenly devoid of all strength, went completely slack. The incredibly expensive crystal wineglass he had been holding high in a toast slipped from his grasp. It hit the polished marble floor with a sharp, explosive crash, shattering into 1,000 glittering pieces that scattered across the stage. Beside him, the glamorous facade of his fake wife violently collapsed. Jocelyn stumbled backward, her designer stiletto heel catching on the edge of the stage carpet. Her eyes grew terrifyingly wide, darting frantically around the room like a cornered animal realizing the hunter had finally arrived. She instinctively raised a shaking hand to her diamond necklace, gasping for air as sheer, suffocating panic paralyzed her entirely. They had expected me to be shivering on a freezing oil rig miles offshore, completely ignorant of their massive betrayal. Seeing me standing right there, breathing the exact same air, was a mathematical impossibility that completely shattered their minds. I did not stop walking until I reached the very edge of the elevated stage. I calmly climbed the short flight of velvet-covered stairs, my heels clicking sharply against the wood, and stepped directly into Ethan's personal space. He was completely mute, his vocal cords paralyzed by absolute fear. He tried to form a word, but only a pathetic, choked gasp escaped his lips. I smoothly reached over and pulled the microphone from the stand right in front of him. I turned to face the vast sea of bewildered faces, sweeping my gaze across the foreign investors and the Vanguard Horizon Dynamics Board of Directors. A cold, incredibly sharp smile touched the corners of my lips. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice echoing loudly and clearly through the massive sound system, completely devoid of any trembling or hesitation. "Please accept my most sincere apologies for the unexpected interruption to your lavish celebration." My husband, Ethan, was just about to deliver a passionate speech, honoring the brilliant mind behind the massive technology transfer you are all celebrating tonight. However, it seems he has unfortunately lost his voice. So, allow me to introduce myself properly. My name is Alice Morris. I am a senior marine engineer, and I am the sole, legitimate creator, designer, and legal owner of the offshore wind turbine core technology you are attempting to purchase this evening. A heavy, suffocating wave of shock slammed into the audience. The profound silence was instantly broken by a chaotic symphony of loud murmurs, furious whispers, and angry gasps. The wealthy foreign investors, men who had just committed tens of millions of dollars to this project, looked back and forth between me and the terrified woman standing behind Ethan. The realization hit them like a massive physical blow. The woman they had been whining and dining, the woman who had signed their preliminary consulting contracts under the name Alice Morris, was an absolute fraud. They realized they had been doing business with a terrible, incompetent imposter who knew absolutely nothing about complex energy grids. The aggressive murmurs quickly turned into loud, demanding shouts from the senior board members, demanding an immediate explanation for this catastrophic breach of trust. Sensing the total collapse of her multi-million-dollar fantasy, Jocelyn suddenly lunged forward. She grabbed a spare microphone from a nearby table, her voice shrill, trembling, and completely hysterical. "Do not listen to a single word she says," Jocelyn screamed, pointing a perfectly manicured, shaking finger directly at my face. "Security, please remove this woman immediately. She is a completely crazy, deranged stalker who has been obsessively harassing my husband for months. She is having a psychotic breakdown and is trying to ruin our company." She was desperately clinging to the very last, pathetic shred of her fabricated reality. Her voice cracked under the immense pressure of her own disgusting lies. But before a single security guard could even take a step toward the stage, the massive oak double doors at the back of the grand ballroom violently swung open for a second time. The loud, heavy footsteps of several men marching in perfect unison echoed through the hall, completely silencing the panicked crowd. Victor Vance, the ruthless billionaire real estate tycoon, stepped into the light. He looked like an absolute force of nature, his face a terrifying mask of controlled, lethal fury. Flanking him were 4 senior corporate litigators, all dressed in immaculate black suits, carrying thick leather briefcases filled with undeniable, highly encrypted evidence of her profound betrayal. The collective gasp from the local Boston socialites was deafening. Everyone in that room knew exactly who Victor Vance was, and they all knew exactly how aggressively he destroyed anyone who dared to cross him. Victor did not even glance at the murmuring crowd. He did not acknowledge the terrified executives or the confused foreign buyers. His dark, furious eyes locked immediately onto Jocelyn. The absolute venom in his stare was palpable. Her hysterical screaming instantly died in her throat. The microphone slipped from her hands, hitting the stage with a loud, ringing feedback noise that made several guests wince and cover their ears. Her legs completely gave out, losing all structural integrity, and she sank to her knees right there on the hard stage floor, weeping uncontrollably in front of the entire city elite. Ethan fell back against the wooden podium, clutching his chest as if he were having a massive panic attack, completely destroyed by the sudden, overwhelming convergence of his worst nightmares. With the aggressive, dominant arrival of the billionaire predator, the lavish celebratory party was officially dead. The grand ballroom had instantly transformed from a palace of corporate greed into a brutal, inescapable public tribunal, and I was standing proudly at the very center, ready to deliver the final, crushing judgment. The heavy tension in the room had reached its absolute breaking point, but I was not entirely finished. I reached into the sleek leather portfolio tucked under my arm and retrieved my high-performance engineering tablet. With a swift, practiced motion, I connected a specialized wireless adapter directly into the main presentation console on the stage. The massive digital projector screen behind me, which had proudly displayed the Vanguard Horizon Dynamics corporate logo just seconds prior, blinked black for a fleeting moment before mirroring my personal terminal. I tapped the glass screen twice. A colossal, high-definition image of the Master Technology Transfer Agreement flashed before the entire audience. It was the exact document Ethan had frantically begged me to sign 2 days ago. The supposed tax amendment that was actually a blanket power of attorney, as you can see. I projected my voice over the murmuring crowd. turning to look directly at the foreign investors sitting in the front row. My husband believed he had successfully secured my legal authorization to liquidate my life's work. However, he failed to realize that an engineer never leaves a system completely unguarded. I executed a decryption sequence on my tablet. Instantly, the digital signature block on the massive screen glowed a bright, warning red, a hidden cryptographic watermark, previously completely invisible to the naked eye, expanded across the entire document. The giant, undeniable words, legally null and void, flashed brightly. "This document is corrupted at its very core," I stated clearly. "Any attempt to finalize this $85 million transaction will be immediately flagged as a catastrophic federal fraud violation. The intellectual property is locked away in an independent trust. The deal you are celebrating tonight is officially dead." The reaction was explosive. The chairman of the Vanguard Horizon Dynamics Board of Directors, an older man with a reputation for absolute ruthlessness, stood up so aggressively that his chair crashed backward onto the floor. His face was purple with uncontainable rage. He pointed a trembling finger directly at Ethan. "You arrogant, incompetent fool!" the chairman roared, his voice echoing over the chaotic noise of the panicked guests. "You have completely jeopardized our international standing and attempted to make us accomplices to massive corporate theft. As of this exact second, you are permanently terminated from your position as Chief Executive Officer. Your shares are instantly frozen. Security, lock down every single exit in this ballroom and detain this man until the economic police arrive." While the board of directors scrambled to contain the massive corporate fallout, Victor Vance stepped past the podium. He did not even spare a single glance at Ethan. He walked directly toward Jocelyn, who was still weeping uncontrollably on the stage floor, her expensive makeup completely ruined. Victor reached inside his impeccably tailored suit jacket and pulled out a thick, heavy stack of legal documents. Without a single ounce of hesitation or pity, he threw the papers directly into her face. The pages scattered across the polished wood like fallen leaves. "Those are your official divorce papers," Victor said, his voice dropping to a terrifying, deadly calm. "I have already frozen every single joint account. I have locked you out of every property I own. You are walking away from our marriage with exactly $0.00. Furthermore, my legal team has already filed comprehensive criminal charges against you for wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit grand larceny. You wanted to play the role of a brilliant mastermind. Jocelyn, now you get to play the role of a federal inmate, completely stripped of his stolen corporate empire, his fake wealth, and his powerful allies." Ethan finally broke. The paralyzing shock wore off, replaced by a pathetic, overwhelming desperation. He collapsed onto his knees right in front of me, grabbing the hem of my designer suit jacket with violently trembling hands. Tears streamed down his pale, sweaty face. "Alice, please," he sobbed, his voice cracking into a high-pitched, miserable whine. "Please listen to me. I was completely brainwashed. She manipulated me. Jocelyn poisoned my mind and forced me into this scheme. I still love you. We can fix this. Please, do not throw our entire marriage away." I looked down at the man I had once sworn to love for the rest of my life. I felt absolutely nothing. No sadness, no anger, only a profound, freezing emptiness. I reached into my portfolio one final time and extracted a single, crisp manila envelope. I dropped it onto the floor right next to his shaking hands. "I am not fixing anything," I replied, my tone as cold and unforgiving as the deep ocean. "Those are my divorce terms. You are leaving this marriage with absolutely nothing but the clothes on your back. Do not ever speak my name again." The wail of approaching sirens pierced the cold night air, growing rapidly louder until the flashing red and blue lights illuminated the hotel windows. A squad of uniformed police officers, accompanied by federal economic agents, marched purposefully into the grand ballroom. They hauled Ethan roughly to his feet, ignoring his pathetic cries, and snapped heavy metal handcuffs tightly around his wrists. As they dragged him away, He was forced to walk the long, humiliating path through the exact same crowd of billionaires and investors he had so desperately tried to impress. They stared at him with absolute, unconcealed disgust, watching the complete and utter destruction of a greedy, arrogant man. 8 months later, the Boston sky was a brilliant, clear blue. I stood by the massive floor-to-ceiling windows of my brand-new corner office, looking out over the bustling city. The massive legal battles were over. Ethan and Jocelyn were both facing severe federal prison sentences, their lives completely reduced to ashes. I had officially launched my own independent renewable energy engineering firm with the full, uncompromised control of my massive intellectual property portfolio. My new company was already securing massive international contracts on my own terms. I took a deep breath of the fresh, clean air, feeling the warm sunlight on my face. I had survived the darkest betrayal, outsmarted the most vicious predators, and emerged stronger, wealthier, and completely free. Hello once again to the amazing audience of Violet Revenge Stories. We sincerely thank you from the bottom of our hearts for listening to this entire story. We would love to know where you are listening from today, so please let us know in the comments. If you found today's story empowering and entertaining, please consider supporting our channel with just $1. You can donate by scanning the PayPal QR code on your screen or by using the PayPal link located in the description or the comments section of this video. Your generous support allows us to pay our dedicated staff, helping them feed their families, and ensures we can continue creating these thrilling stories for you. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.